Hello and welcome back to another episode of Injustice For All MMA. My name is David, and this episode is for UFC Fight Night Thompson versus Holland. First things first, this was an amazing fight card. The main event, the main card, finishes after finishes. A couple things I want to talk about. I'll talk about them when it comes down to those fights, but there are no injustices. That's the most important part. No one got robbed. Just, I'm going to go through the niggles on the scorecard. So honorable mentions, we'll start with those. First fight of the night, first honorable mention, Jauregui. I'm going to get this name eventually. Okay, because I'm going to mess this up a couple times, but I'm going to try. I think it's Jauregui. Or Jauregui. I'm going to say Jauregui just for the sake of it. Jauregui versus Nunes, you know what I'm talking about. This fight ended in a TKO for Jauregui. I had the score 10-9 in the first round. I put a close marker next to it. In that first round, Nunes dropped Jauregui, but got a takedown. Nunes dropped Jauregui. But got taken down and was outstruck. Now, here's why I put a close marker on it. When Nunes had dropped Jauregui, it was pretty, I would say it's fairly early in the rounds, but when you put everything together, she was still outstruck and she got taken down. She wasn't heavily outstruck, but she was outstruck enough and she had gotten taken down to where I felt as though, I feel like Jauregui won that round. But I put a close marker because I was very unsure. I could probably be wrong here, and I may be. You go to the judges' scorecards. Daniel Torres, Eric Colon, Saul Dimot all had it 10-9 for Nunes. There's that. I'm probably wrong on this one, but I have a strong case for it, but again, it's fine. Next honorable mention, Levy versus Valdez. This fight, Levy had won this 29-28. I gave the first round and the third round to Levy. Okay, so we go to the first round. Okay, so I have everything organized now. So in that first round, okay, Levy had outstruck Valdez. And he dropped Valdez twice. One of them was like a body shot. It wasn't really like a traditional drop. You go to the second round. Valdez outstruck Levy, and Levy had a takedown. And then in the third round, it was kind of close on strikes, but then Levy had about 4 takedowns. Therefore, that round goes to him. It was kind of close, a little close, not close enough to not know who the winner was, but it was close in between in between certain rounds. And that's where I got the 29-28. The judges, Eric Colon, he had it the same way I did. Troy Wincapawa had it the same way as well. And then Chris Lee, he had a 30-27. Honorable mention to Chris Lee. In the second round, I believe Valdez did enough for sure to win that. He definitely outstruck Levy, but though Levy had a takedown, it wasn't enough to win the round for him. You go to the third honorable mentions. We have Elkins versus Pearce. I had a 30-27 for Pearce. In that first round. Okay, in that first round, Pearce outstruck Elkins. Both had a takedown, but Pearce had more ground and pound for sure. And then in the second round, it was kind of close on the feet. There were moments of this fight where I felt as though, if you listen to the commentary, maybe you would have felt as though Pearce was searching for a particular knockout. And so if you watch the fight back, you can see Pearce is throwing not as much as he needed to on certain portions of the fight, which made it kind of eerily close, because while Elkins was throwing and was missing a lot, he was landing a significant portion, enough to where you could, if if the fight had ended at a certain moment in certain rounds, you could have pointed the way of Elkins. But anyways, in the second round, it was close on the feet until Elkins had a takedown. But at that moment, Pearce reversed position and landed a lot of ground and pound. And then in the third round, Pearce outstruck Elkins on the feet and had some ground and pound and a takedown. So there's that. We go to the judges' scorecards. Eric Colon had a 30-27 for Pearce. Daniel Torres had a 30-27 for Pearce. And then Derek Cleary, honorable mention Derek Cleary, he had a 30-26. He gave, in that second round, I don't see a 10-8 there. I understand why he gave it to him. It was close on the feet, and then Pearce had landed a lot of ground and pound on the bottom. Landed a lot of ground and pound when he reversed position. I don't think that's enough to give him a 10-8 there. You go to the next honorable mention, Johnson versus Diakiese. Okay, I had this 29-28 for Johnson. I gave the last two rounds to Johnson. In the first round, Diakiese just outstruck Johnson. He wasn't... It was one of those rounds where no one is landing anything clean, but because he's putting out so much, you just have to give him the round. But he did, they both landed enough. But if we were to see who landed more cleaner strikes, it was definitely Diakiese in that first round. You go to the second round, Johnson outstruck Diakiese. His strikes were much more cleaner, a lot cleaner, and he just outstruck him activity-wise and strikes that landed cleanly. And then the third round, 100%, that's probably the clearest and cleanest round there is. Johnson outstruck Diakiese in that one as well. Go to the judges' scorecards. Chris Lee, his scorecard reflects mine. Saul Diamante, his scorecard reflects mine. And then Troy Winkapow, he gave the first round to Johnson. That's nonsense. If you watch that fight back, again, honorable mention to him, but if you watch that fight back, no one's landing clean. That first round is nonsense. First round, you just go to the person who's just throwing whatever. And I don't say throwing whatever to be disparaging, but Diakiese wasn't just throwing whatever. He was landing leg kicks over and over and over and over again. So there's that. Go to the next honorable mention. Guida versus Holtzman. I had this 30-27 for Guida. This fight ended in a split decision. That's... No. That's weird. Again, this is another fight where there were weird portions of this fight that were close, and it's all because of Holtzman, because of his lack of just throwing. He was pushing the pace most of this fight. I'd say the first two rounds, and then he was pushing the pace. He was kind of pushing Guida to the fence, but it's not that he wasn't throwing, it's that he wasn't landing. It's almost like he was short each time, or hitting the air, or just not landing on Guida. Guida would then land a little bit and then move back, land a little bit and then move back. So I'm surprised it was scored that way. That's a nonsense split decision. You go to the first round. Guida outstruck Holtzman. That's clear. Second round, it was close on the feet, but then Guida had two takedowns. That's what gives him the round. And then the third one was interesting. So it's close on the feet, but the first portion of that round, Holtzman's kind of outstriking him. And the reason why I put close on the feet, if you want to be accurate about it, you could maybe say Holtzman outstruck him barely on the feet, but he's outstriking him in the first part of that third round. Guida starts to land some strikes, but Holtzman's still kind of ahead on strikes, really. And then here's the portion where you get into it. Normally, if this would have ended with just one takedown, maybe this round could have gone to Holtzman, but instead, Guida gets a takedown, then he gets another takedown, then he just starts chaining takedowns to the point where he gets 4 takedowns and the round belongs to him. It's not as though he had gotten heavily outstruck on the feet to where you now have to look at him not being active with those takedowns. Once he gets 4 takedowns, that kind of secures him that round. Hence the 30-27. You go to the judges' scorecards. It's weird how they all 3 judges scored it. Actually, I disagree with this one. With the Jauregui versus Nunes one, I'm kind of a little insecure about it because of the intricacies of that fight. In this one, I think I'm I'm fully right on this one. I don't care what anyone says. I mean, I care. You know what I'm trying to say. Dave Torelli had it. He's the one who had it a split decision. He gave the first 2 rounds to Holtzman. That's nonsense. Honorable mention to him to all 3, but we'll get to that. Gives the first round to Holtzman. No. Gives the second round to Holtzman. Absolutely not. The first one you can make a case again, but you can't make the case with he's pushing the pace. He's getting outstruck still. And then he gives the last round to Guida. Eric Coloni gave it. He had a 29-28 for Guida. He gives all the rounds to Guida except for the first round. I've explained it already. Michael Tate, he gives the first round to Holtzman, and then the last 2 rounds to Guida. So that's weird. I felt as though if you watch back that first round, Holtzman is pushing the pace, but he's getting outstruck still. So it's a weird thing. Next honorable mention, Price versus Rowe. This fight ended in a TKO for Rowe. I gave the first 2 rounds to Rowe, and I put a close marker on the second round. In that first round, in that very first round, despite Rowe getting outstruck, because this one's a weird one. This happens kind of randomly. I remember during the Abu Dhabi timeline, there's a couple fights in there that I can't reach back in my head and pull, but there's a couple fights in there where someone would get outstruck. Or the Apex days, I think it was those, where someone would get outstruck, but because they're not landing as clean, or because they're not landing the cleaner, more loud, effective shots, they're not going to win the round, and that's what happened here, where Rowe was definitely outstruck. He definitely was outstruck in this round, but he landed the cleaner, more significant shots. And then you go to the second round where Price outstruck Rowe on the feet, but Rowe had 2 takedowns with a submission attempt. Price was active on the bottom, but it wasn't enough to win him the round. But it was close. This is where I put the close marker, because Price outstruck him. Price outstruck Rowe. And then, and also Price was a little active on the bottom. And the real significance of this round is Rowe getting the 2 takedowns and just a little bit of time with that submission. So that's why I put the close marker there. You can kind of argue the round for Price, because he did outstrike Rowe. Next and last honorable mention. Also, before I get to the last honorable mention, real quick, back to Hill versus Ducote. That fight ended 30-27 for Hill. There's nothing really to talk about there, but I've noticed that there's a lot of attention on Angela Hill's record, 14-12. And every time Angela Hill fights, and I don't know if it's because she's just a part of the UFC infrastructure, but every time her name is brought up, it's, oh man, she was on the bad end of a lot of decisions. I don't think that's true. Her record is incredible in the sense that she is a great fighter who fought a lot of upper level competition. And her recent run of wins has been against some girls that we shouldn't really clap for. I mean, Ashley Yoder, Emily Ducote, whatever, and we can keep going down the line. In the Lemos fight, I can't remember off the top of my head if I scored that for Lemos or for whatever. These fights that she had a split decision in are razor close. Razor close, to the point where you can't really do the whole, that person deserved the... Like, it's not one of those fights where you can kind of say one person won definitively. So that's an interesting look into just the way Angela Hill's record and career and how she's talked about is looked at. Last honorable mention, the funnest fight ever. Thompson versus Holland. I had this, Thompson won by TKO. Doctor stoppage, really. Not doctor stoppage, excuse me. Fuck. Corner stoppage. I know the commentator was saying good job by Bob Perez or whoever Holland's coach was, but if you hear it, if you heard it live, it was Holland just saying, "Hey, take the thing off take the glove off my hand," which is a sure sign of he stopped it. It was his stoppage, obviously, but Corner stoppage for Thompson. He was going crazy. Second round and on, he was on. I give the first round to Holland. I give the last 3 rounds to Thompson. I put a 10-8 on the 4th round. In the first round, Holland outstruck Thompson. Thompson had some cleaner shots. A lot of Holland's shots were winging. Now, they were landing, but they were wingy. They were very much, there's a card, there was another one over here. It was very Price Rowe first roundish. That's the closest I can find to an example here. It was like that, except Thompson lost this round instead of Rowe losing the first round. And he kind of rocked Thompson later in that round. You go to the second round, and it was all Thompson from here. Thompson outstruck Holland. Holland got a takedown, but he literally got up. He wasn't going to do anything with it. Same thing again. Thompson outstruck Holland. Holland got a takedown again, but this one was kind of like an accidental takedown. He gets up immediately. And then the 4th round is where you can put a possible 10-8, but I gave it 10-8. It was Thompson outstruck Holland heavily, dropped him, and he had some. And here's the funny thing: he dropped him, got on top of him, got some light ground, got a little bit of ground and pound, and then was like, okay, hold on, let me get up too, because he got up also. So there was that. We go to the judges' scorecards. I'm skipping ahead. We go to the judges' scorecards, and all 3 judges had it essentially the same way I did, except for Derek Clearly. But Eric Colon had it the exact same way I had it. Same with Chrisley, and then Derek Clearly had the exact same way, except he didn't give a 10-8 for Thompson in that 4th round. I think it's a 10-8, but I'm not mad at it. This was probably one of the nicest fights I've ever seen. I mean, if you watch this entire fight, it's essentially just Holland smiling, laughing, high-fiving. This was, we've seen fights where guys are like really nice to each other to the point where they don't take advantage of certain things. There was like a headbutt, and Holland just kind of puts his head on top of Thompson, kind of just like, all right, don't do anything here, just kind of stay still. There's a point where Holland gets hit low, and Thompson's just like, all right, I got you, I'm not gonna do anything. Holland I believe, if I look at it, he had 2 takedowns, and he just didn't do anything with them. He could have actually won some rounds here by ground and pounding. Instead, he just decided, no, I promised, in air quotes, right? Because once you get in there are no promises. Hence why Thompson is training for takedowns. Because it could have been a whole like, oh, I'm not going to take you down, and then he takes him down. But one of the nicest, I'm not going to say I was going to cry, but I don't blame anyone if they fucking did cry, because it was one of those things where he's just like, all right, he gets up, they high-five each other. After the fight, he goes up to him. You can see it in Wonder Boy's eyes. He just goes up to Kevin. He's hugging him. He puts his head on his shoulder. Thompson is one of the this was one of the nicest fights I've ever seen. And not nice in the sense of like fighting style. I mean nice in the sense of 2 people liking each other. If you don't grapple Wonder Boy, his striking will kill you. We saw that with Jeff Neal. I know a lot of people want to put asterisks on it, but still, he did that with Jeff Neal. He did that with Vicente Luque. And then here he did that with Kevin Holland. There could be an asterisk on this one in the sense that Kevin Holland did win the first round. And you can maybe argue, hey, if his hand doesn't break, he keeps throwing it the same wild way he did in the first round and possibly maybe hurting Thompson again. But that didn't happen. That's how fighting works. That's all I got here. Thank you for listening, and God bless.